Hello, this is Skarp from SkarpTech company, and I'm here to showcase OCTOM, the input automation software that I've been developing on and off for almost 2 years now. And I'm going to show the interfaces, the windows between the apps. It will be available for Windows and Linux with X display server. But this is the dashboard. Most of the messages will be, if one has debug messages on, they will be shown here. I can access every other relevant window from it. So you can see settings, manage connections, input panel, monitor mode, schedule beta, distributor plus, Mac Live, and then to exit. These features here, they are beta because they are features which I am still would like to get input from users, the feedback from users to know how they would like to actually be implemented, what will be best for their workflow. But I can show the draft of how the basic version, how I've thought that they will be used. But the basic premise for this app works flawlessly. One can take input from this machine, which OCTOM Pro or the OCTOM server is on, and relay it to client machines, similar to an app called Synergy, but it's actually the difference between these two apps are very big, because Synergy only uses one keyboard and one mouse between all connected machines, and OCTOM allows one to replicate input across any machine and also save and serialize that input and transfer it to any other machine. Like for example, here I just opened the input panel, which allows one to edit a JSON JavaScript object file to, if one needs to fine tune the inputs, input events. One can do it in a more convenient way than just opening a text editor and then editing each field by oneself. Here everything will be displayed, and one can easily add or remove events from here. And currently just the US English keyboard layout is supported, but I'll add right after all the most common keyboard layouts, like European and South American language layouts very soon. Since each key code is interpreted differently depending on the keyboard layout, of course, that's why it is different. And this is really convenient. Auto mouse up, auto release key, so one doesn't have to manually hit like left mouse button down and then up manually. It's like automatically can lift it, press it down and then lift it up. Same thing with keys. Like if one wants to put the key E, then one can have it get lifted up immediately. And one can edit it here directly or from the template, remove it, add it again. And to save it into a JSON file, we can just save it as save series of inputs. And it will open the file manager, name the file and save it, and then one can call it these inputs, and so those inputs can be replicated. I will show that in a showcase video. Here I'm just showing the interface, and here is the monitor mode. This is intended for use with when one has many connected clients and one wants to relay inputs live to them from the master PC or the server PC. This is meant for that, so one doesn't interact with the master PC desktop environment interface, only with the client machines. And then it has this olive gray gradient graphics, so it's not an eyesore where one looks at other screens when it's manipulating them. That's why it's called monitor mode. So it's like just when one monitors other monitors, other screens. And here are the settings. One can save input files into binary instead of JSON, BSON instead of JSON, so one can save some disk space if one wants to. When it's shipped, light mode is supported. It is just a toggle that I have to change. So it will come as with dark and light mode, and also the same as system. Mouse precision, when one records more inputs, one can have less precision of the mouse if one doesn't want to clutter the input file. If there is something that doesn't require high mouse precision, this is an option. And also really soon I plan to allow the user to set what the mouse precision actually means in terms of milliseconds between the mouse movements. Is the mouse movements that this is about. Mouse buttons still are recorded regardless of this. Yes, and it's very important to stress that OCTOM does not do almost any telemetry except for the license verification of if one has purchased a license of the software, then one verifies it. One has purchased it, and then it will just check to a server API from SkarpTech that it has been legitimately purchased. That's the only telemetry that exists, and it is technically possible to package it with a shipped license key, and one can install it offline. So yes, every input that is listened to is only local, purely local, so it is safe in the terms of the company itself is not listening to an input. It is 100% privacy respecting, and the only data is on the responsibility of the user, how the user wants to handle it. It's entirely in the user's control. And here I'll go through the setting options just to give an overview. These values can be changed. Oh yes, I want to stress this. One can, it is ideal to use OCTOM Server or Pro with a macro keyboard or a macro mouse. So there's start, stop keys, start serialization, finish serialization, actually load serialization. I'm going to edit this. One can bind Unicode keys one usually almost never use. It doesn't interact with the system at all in a macro keyboard to the macro buttons, and then one can call these functions here, so it don't interfere at all on the host PC. That is most ideal, the ideal way to use this, but this is also acceptable depending on one's workflow. And these are just some defaults which can work if one uses just a normal keyboard. One doesn't have a macro keyboard as such. And one can set the port out, port in, host IP, and this is like a signifier, so the host verifies that the clients are connected to the right one. It's like an extra security measure. And in Windows, this goes directly to firewall, Windows Defender firewall settings. In the Linux version, of course, one must do that. There is not a button shortcut for that, of course. It entirely depends what firewall app one uses, or through the terminal. Here, this is a debug build right now here, so of course license that's inactive. I could toggle this button, but no need for that currently. One can set the start time, so one can delay from how long time one's serialized input to run. Here's debug levels for more information in debug output. Debug level, you can get more information on the terminal if something seems wrong, if there's any bug. One can easily select here and then copy paste to the support thread and ask about what's about, get help, tell me what's wrong, and I can fix it. But of course, yes, that's only worst case scenario, of course. So everything working fine, there's no worry about this. And these animations, this is just on the server side, on this host side. One can see if one put the listener on or off, or the silence mode is on or off. Now, how the silence mode works is that if one is connected to many clients and one wants to record inputs without sending those live inputs that we record the clients, one can turn silence mode on, and then one can record inputs in peace without any inputs being relayed to the clients. That's how silence mode works. And one can also use the manage connections window and turn it off, turn any machine on or off. Now these ones, they are not even connected, so it doesn't really matter. But one can choose what kind of machines will receive inputs or not. So that's also a way of turning off inputs to clients. Although one can also like discriminate or separate between what machines are receiving or not. So it is another way. It's not exactly like silent mode. And also I will showcase now the distributor plus. In this one can have many clients connected, and then one can group them, and then in each group one can select a file like a JSON or BSON file with serialized inputs, put them here. One can have many of them at the same time, and then one can send different inputs to clients all at the same time with this button. Then after one uploaded the file, send input parallel simultaneous. This is just what my mind thought about how it works technically, and then I wrote the text to this button. But that can of course be changed to something more colloquial, understandable. And then one can also try to send the inputs to all the clients, which one can do also to hotkeys instead of using this window. Add input file and then click run, and then it will send to all clients. So that's pretty much it for now. I can also showcase macro live. Okay, so macro live, if one wants to record inputs in a fast manner, one doesn't want to be all the time dealing with file manager save dialog all the time, or selecting a file to the file manager. One can just use the hotkeys and then save to some preset files like these ones: live cache input 2, 3, 4, 5, and then one can just press these buttons. And there is also space for 4 other serialized inputs that one can customly assign to these hotkeys: F6, F7, F8, F9, and one can just call a file directly to the press of a button. That's the idea of this. So one can conveniently automatize like a small workflow. That's the point of macro live. So yeah, it is similar, a little bit similar to what a macro app can do from a firmware of programmable mouse or programmable keyboard, but this is more sophisticated, since one can just use a normal keyboard, normal mouse, and mix and do whatever, and just have it work here. And these ones are also editable, of course, because they are JSON files. One can use a text editor and edit them. Don't have to record live just to use them, of course. And now I will show what the idea is behind the remote instructor mode. So the point of this is, if one wants, if there is, for example, something that is running on a client machine, and one wants the inputs to run depending on what is happening on that client machine. For example, let's say that a machine is like a CI builder, continuous integration builder, just compiling apps, but whatever system it's running on doesn't really control the temperature properly. So one can take a terminal and have a CPU temperature sensor and then show the temperature that is going on, updating constantly, and then one captures that part of the screen that shows the temperature. This is just an example use case. One can use it for anything else, of course, that has to do with this text recognition. And then it will, for example, if it's going way high, or for example 80 degrees, and that's too hot, then one can have serious inputs of typing a command to fan control firmware to increase the fan speed on demand. And then when it has gone down, when the OCR detects on the terminal of the place that's captured, the temperature has gone down, one can execute another file, and then it will cool it again, and that's the point of this sequential remote instruction 1 to 2. Of course, this is a draft. This is not exactly ready for production because I want to see some feedback on how people would ideally use this. That's why it's not entirely ready yet. And of course, I've got a scroll bar here, so it fits all resolutions. But yeah, I feel that this app is ready to ship, ready to be made, because I have worked on this for such a long time, and it works now for so many use cases. But whoever buys the license will receive free updates up to 1 year. Well, no, at least 1 year, but can be more than 1 year, because I want to give value. Anyone who purchases the license is also get some value from it in the future, of course. Every time a license purchase, it helps me develop more.